Martha Kowalski had worked in the kitchen of Ridgeline Lodge for 11 years, and in all that time, nobody had asked her opinion about anything more important than whether the soup needed more salt. She was 58 years old, with flour permanently ground into the creases of her knuckles and a limp in her left leg from a hip that had never healed quite right after a fall on the ice 3 winters back. The guests who came to the lodge, wealthy skiers and corporate retreaters, rarely looked at her twice. To them, she was simply the woman behind the pass-through window, the one who made the chowder they praised without ever learning her name. The night the storm came, there were 22 people trapped inside the lodge. The owner, a nervous man named Daniel Reyes, had gone down to the valley that afternoon for supplies and never made it back. The assistant manager, a young woman fresh out of hospitality school, stood by the window watching snow swallow the parking lot and said, over and over, that someone would come. Nobody believed her. The power had failed at 6 o'clock. The backup generator sputtered, coughed, and died an hour later. By 8, the temperature inside the great room had already begun to drop, and the guests, stripped of their comforts, started to panic in the particular way that frightened, privileged people panic, loudly. And with blame dot, it was Martha who lit the first fire in the enormous stone hearth that nobody had used in years because it was considered decorative. It was Martha who knew where the old wood was stored, who knew which flue still drew properly, who knew that the emergency radio was not in the office where it was supposed to be but in a drawer in the kitchen, because she had noticed it there months ago and never mentioned it, because nobody had ever asked her about anything but soup. "You're the cook," said a man in a cashmere sweater, watching her drag a crate of split logs across the floor. His name was Grant Whitfield, and he ran a hedge fund in Chicago. "Shouldn't someone else be doing this?" "There isn't anyone else," Martha said, and kept walking. By midnight, the storm had become something out of an old story, a wall of white so total that the windows looked like sheets of poured concrete. The lodge groaned under the wind. A woman named Priya, traveling with her 2 young children, began to cry quietly in the corner, and her daughter, no older than 7, asked her mother if they were going to die. Martha heard this. She had heard a great many things over 11 years of standing quietly behind a window, and she had learned that people speak most honestly when they think no one of consequence is listening. She went to the girl and crouched down, her hip protesting, and told her she was going to make real hot chocolate, the kind made on a fire, and that it took a brave person to help stir it. The girl wiped her face and nodded. Small work, but it gave the child something to hold besides fear. There was a moment, just after she stood up from the girl, when Martha caught her own reflection in the black glass of the window, ghostly against the storm, and did not recognize the steadiness in it. For 11 years she had made herself small in this building, moving through the great room like a shadow so as not to disturb people who paid more for a weekend than she earned in a month. She had never imagined that the same skills which kept her invisible, patience, thrift, the quiet reading of a room's true condition, were the very things that would decide who lived and who did not. It did not feel like triumph. It felt like something older and steadier. A door she had always known was there, finally swinging open through the night. Martha organized what the frightened rich people of Ridgeline Lodge could not organize for themselves. She rationed the dry goods from the pantry with a precision born of years spent stretching a small kitchen budget to feed hundreds. She showed 2 businessmen who had never in their lives split a log how to feed the fire so it would burn slow and long instead of hot and fast. She found blankets in a storage closet that the assistant manager had forgotten existed. She kept the radio on low, scanning for a signal, and when at last, near 3 in the morning, a burst of static resolved into a ranger's voice, confirming that rescue teams were mobilizing at first light, she was the one who heard it. And she was the one who walked through the great room waking people gently to tell them they would live. Grant Whitfield found her again near dawn, sitting by the hearth, feeding the last of the good wood into the flames with the same unhurried patience she used to feed a stockpot. He had spent the night watching her work, and something in him, Some assumption he had carried his whole life without examining it had come loose. "How did you know all this?" he asked. "The fire, the radio, the rationing. None of that is cooking." Martha considered the question honestly, the way she considered most things. "I